Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Appointed Directors Meeting, our monthly meeting. My name is Ty Venser, Chair of the Board, and in the boardroom is Commissioner Caroline Mejia, and I see Commissioner Edwards is zoomed in, County Manager Ramiro Chavez, and several of our department directors, and we'll go one by one through them and hear what's going on in their departments. Public can follow along through the Thurston County YouTube channel, and we're slated to go till 1 p.m. So let's go with, does anybody have a short timeline? I know, Shelley, sometimes that's you. Does anybody need to go first for any particular reason? Okay, then I'll just go in order of my squares. Patrick O'Connor, Public Defense.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, commissioners. For the latest updates from Public Defense is we're excited to just finish a round of hiring with vacancies, and particularly hiring 2 defense attorneys and 1 legal assistant to form our State v. Blake defense team. As the board's aware, we had a landmark decision that has in February that has really had a tremendous amount of workload impact that we've done our best to spread out the work, including myself. And we just completed this round of recruitment. So this team of attorneys and staff are going to exclusively work for the next 2.5 years on State v. Blake cases. Those are individuals that are either currently incarcerated that need to get back in front of our courts to be resentenced, or get their unlawful possession of a controlled substance conviction vacated and off their record. So we're excited to onboard those staff in the next, well, our assistant has already started, and the attorneys come on board the next couple of weeks. So excited about that. Continue to stay busy with trial work. Our attorneys are trying cases and continuing to get through the backlog as best we can, but we still have a long ways to go. Obviously it's budget season, so we just completed that. And yeah, other than that, you know, we're trying to, obviously as everyone's sort of preparing as best we can for what's happening in our community with the pandemic, and trying to you know, do the best we can to stay safe, but also sort of probably, you know, bracing ourselves that we need to be able to pivot if we need to, depending on the direction from the county. So that's the latest for us. It's vacation season, so we have a lot of staff out doing fun things and in the best place in the country to do things in the summer. So that's it.
Questions for Pat?
No, sir.
Okay. I just had my one-on-one, got all my questions answered yesterday. So, okay, great. We'll go to Dennis then.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dennis Osorio, IT Director. We're still focused on our big projects we did this week, have our ERP kickoff. Want to thank Romero and Commissioner Menser for both speaking at that. It's good to get that project finally rolling. I know it's been a long time coming. So that's good. The permitting project, we're finalizing our RFP, and sponsors are currently assembling the evaluation team on who's going to be looking at those RFPs when they come in. So that should be, hopefully by the end of this month, we'll be releasing that. The JTI project is still set to go live next month for prosecution and defense. I believe September 13th. That'd be a good project to go live and keep moving forward. And then hiring, just like everyone, we've been hiring. We did fill 3 positions last month, but we now have 4 positions open. We had 1 leave to another office, and then we had an internal promotion. So Brian Ferris's old position, Sherry Ilg, our application supervisor, applied for that position and accepted the offer and is now taking on that role here in IT.
Any questions?
No, sir.
Don't hear any? Okay. Jennifer Walker, Public Works.
Hello, everyone. Let's see. Busy with construction projects. Our large Mullen Road project that has been going on for almost 2 years now. We're going to be doing the final paving on that, so the final lift next week, and we are anticipating completion in end of August. I think we're looking at final like in October, having a ribbon cutting ceremony for that. The benefit of that project being increased safety. We have 3 schools that are along there, so adding sidewalks, lighting, that type of thing. And then also there was a partnership with the city of Lacey, so they updated their water and sewer lines there and made some connections. Our fish passage project has at Latigo is underway. Trail work is the south portion of that is starting on the 16th. So lots of coordination going on with that. Overlay program is going strong out there. And I think we're at Vail this morning is where we started. We received a couple of grants recently, one from the Department of Ecology for our solid waste management community litter cleanup program in the amount of just under $253,000. And then also for the local solid waste financial assistance from Department of Ecology, just over $381,000 that will be using to get a couple of projects done, and then also to support some of our operations at the Hazo House. I guess the last thing I'll mention is we just kicked off a project, an internal project in the department to improve our employee performance management. So one of the key deliverables of that will be a new evaluation form that is taking into consideration the core values for the department, and then identifying what those competencies are and having them more tailored to the job classification that employee is in. So that's a cross-divisional team that we have. And so that's one of the first deliverables, but it's also larger than that in terms of it's not just a one time a year you evaluate performance, but there's training that'll then go along with that with our managers and supervisors in terms of, supervisor drop files and how you use those, and having that the importance of the evaluation being more of a collaborative approach and conversations with your staff. So like I said, cross-divisional team working on that will obviously engage the HR in that process as well. So that's what I have.
Public Works questions?
No, sir.
Everybody's quiet today. Okay, Shelley, you're up. Public Health.
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners and everyone. Great to see you. Always a little challenging for me right after we follow a very long late night Board of Health meeting. But a lot of our work, as you all know, is dealing with this current 5th wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. We continue to see our cases rise. Today's case counts are 87 new cases. So once again, we're just continuing to see this go up. So this is very, very concerning to us. We are focusing on making sure there's adequate testing available in our community, increasing our testing efforts, as well as our vaccine efforts and availability throughout the community. We continue to be focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial equity. We have an internal committee in our department that has formed to help to support and advise the overall county strategy on this, as well as within our department, and also focusing on our workforce development, training, and helping to support our employees that have faced a lot of challenges over the last year and a half. we are preparing for a couple upcoming briefings. We look forward to having with you with the Board of Health this Friday at the work session on the Board of Health composition coming up in the future as a result of SSB 1152, which will expand the number of Board of Health members. We also will be providing an update on our Veterans Assistance Program and how we have been investing those dollars and plan to increase funding to veterans in need. And of course, continuing to assess the water quality this summer at our local swimming beaches and lakes. Want to make sure the public has the information about that. We're responding to a high heat, excessive heat event and have declared a hazardous weather event due to the high heat. And that provides extra resources that become available for those that may not have access to cooling centers and air conditioning and things like that to keep them safe and healthy. So lots going on. We're very busy, right in the middle of budget as well. And also excited that we're holding final interviews for our Disease Control and Prevention Division Director position.
Gotta be questions for Shelley. We had 3 or 4 shots at her yesterday over the course of the board meetings.
I do have a question, Shelley, and it is pertaining to the internal efforts that you're looking at regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can you talk just a little bit more about what that effort looks like?
Sure. Well, a couple different things. One, we have been able to hire a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator that is specific to the COVID-19 response. So that's one lens that we're looking at. But the committee that we have formed within our department is going to be developing SMART goals and a plan and be making recommendations for training internally that our staff would like, and also again helping to look at the county plan as that moves forward, and work closely with the new manager that is going to be coming on board for that, and looking at how we can also address the disparities within our community that we're seeing specifically due to race.
Thank you. So you're kind of just like prepping your department to be able to align with the larger county effort that'll happen. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Hey, Ramiro, could you report on, I think last time I talked to you, you guys had done interviews and extended an offer with respect to the county position.
Yes.
Is there any updates there to share?
Yes, absolutely, Commissioner. I extended an offer, and Nicole has accepted the offer, and she is going to begin employment here August 30th, in a couple of weeks. So she'll be located here in the Commissioner's office, and we have a lot of work that needs to be done related to by the way, she's the Racial Equity Program Manager, just to bring that whole conversation. So she'll be reaching out to each one of you. There's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done again, and not just internal, but also external. So be on the lookout, and looking forward for her to join the team. Patrick.
And I guess it's worth mentioning, since we're on public health and COVID-19, that the boards will be, in light of some of the new information from the state, the board at tomorrow's, is it tomorrow? No, Friday's planning session will be taking up some of the issues and which direction the board wants to go with respect to the issues raised in the governor's press conference. So there could be changes. Things are going the wrong direction really fast. I'll be zooming in for all meetings. I'm not going to be in the boardroom anymore. I'll be doing all meetings from Zoom like we had previously, and we'll have to just see what other changes need to be made. So Other questions for Shelley? Okay, Maria is up. HR.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, it seemed like all of July was really busy with assisting offices and departments with their policy level requests. In some cases, there's a desire for new classifications, and so we're trying to pull numbers for those and get them the personnel numbers they need to then insert into their budgets for the 2022-2023. So I was glad when the deadline hit August 6th, and so that has calmed down. I was spending some time the last few weeks just trying to figure out the childcare issues that employees are experiencing. Well, this preceded COVID, finding good childcare that was affordable was always very difficult. COVID made it much worse. A lot of centers have closed and they're not reopening. So I reached out to our employee assistance program, their executive manager, just to see if they had any resources for us. But they're seeing this as a problem throughout the state, and they continue, they ask us to continue to do what we have been doing, is offer flexible work hours where we can, telework if we can, and not knowing what's going to happen this school year. Just flexibility still continues to be the best path forward. So I was hopeful that maybe there'd been some improvements in that, but we're just not finding it. What else? On the HR department, we have interviews for HR specialists that's vacant. I was actually really pleased we got a great candidate pool this time around. So I don't know if it was a matter of timing or if there was just interest that this position is our paraprofessional, and if it just is kind of the level that others are seeking to step into. So my fingers are crossed that we can get that position filled. And for right now, it'll provide classification compensation, FMLA support. So let's see, what else? ERP is ramping up. Real pleased to see the good turnout at our kickoff meetings, and I can say that HR benefits payroll staff are really, really excited to get started on this project. Any questions for me, Jennifer?
Got to find my notes. Sorry. Oh, the teleworking policy. I know you have been working hard on drafting a new teleworking policy and agreement that goes along with that. I'm just curious as to the status of that. And then if you could give a status on the class and comp project.
Sure. I think I'm at a point with the telework policy. I had to work through a number of issues when we were considering allowing out-of-state residents to work for the county, but the compliance issues are quite complex. And so we're going to pilot a few of them and try to work through those. But the policy I'll be bringing before the board will only allow for up to 30 days a year. Somebody needs to, for some reason, they need to be out of state to maybe provide care for a parent, but they could do some work from wherever they're at. So that's where that's at. I just need to get that on the AIS. Frankly, I've been too tapped for time. I have not had time to do that. And the class and comp, I'm working with legal on a contract, and then I will also bring that before the board to get a authorization to execute a contract. So really close. Budget season really just, it's all consuming. And frankly, one of my frustrations is that I don't ever get to work on some of these other initiatives that are equally important. So fingers crossed that I can make some strides there.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's really helpful. Is the idea that all of the classifications will be evaluated as a part of that? It's kind of that bigger holistic approach, or are you tiering it, or?
So the way the proposals come in, all the vendors have what I called what do they call them? Like job analysis questionnaires. And so it'll be a county-wide initiative. We carved out the sheriff's office because of the civil service system, and there's just different requirements for them. So every employee will get an opportunity to update what they're actually doing. So it's their job description. Then the vendors propose to look at our current classifications and make updates to those, be it essential functions, distinguishing characteristics, minimum quals. Then their process would be to bring those before the board for adoption. And then they would do a compensation study, but they don't actually look at every single position. They pick what are called benchmark positions. So using the HR series, they might look at the specialist to see where it is in the market. Are we in market? Are we above market? Are we lagging? And then they use that as an anchor to set the compensation for the rest of the series. And the typical number of benchmarks recommended are about 100. Any other questions on that one, on that project? And so one of the things that I'm going to start saying from day one is that these compensation studies, they are quite complex. They're not always 100% implemented. There are huge budget ramifications if certain positions are lagging in the market. And our compensation philosophy at the county is we want to be at market, or at least within 95 to 100%. But if there's not, we have to also be fiscally sound. And so that's why part of the process is to bring them before the commissioners. So then they get to make decisions and prioritize. So if we're lagging 20% behind, let's say in engineers, we may want to address that. But if we're lagging at 7% in a classification where we're not seeing recruitment or retention, that may get prioritized or may not get implemented.
So you're trying to manage our expectations.
I'm trying to manage expectations.
Okay.
And
Duly noted.
And I've done a bit of research, and I've reached out to comparable counties that have done similar studies. Pierce County did one that concluded in 2019. They have not implemented it, partly because of COVID. So it was completed at the end of 2019, and then they went into 2020 dealing with COVID. Spokane did one, I think, in 2018. As of 2020, they had not implemented theirs. They found that they were behind market on a number of positions, and depending on which implementation strategy they chose, it was upwards of $6 million for them. So these aren't like small numbers if we're lagging. I do feel pretty comfortable that the majority of our positions are within market, or if they're lagging, it's might be by that 5%. I know nobody believes me when I say that, but hence why we're bringing in a third-party neutral vendor to deal with what is really a complex, and it's an emotional topic, because people, they feel that we don't value them if we're not paying them like what Pierce is paying, or King County comes up quite a bit. And again, it's compensation philosophy. Any other questions on this topic? All right. And I'll be having probably a similar presentation when I get before the board. because we need to do a lot of education.
Yeah, Maria, I just wanted to add on, I appreciate your meeting with me recently as we, really internalized our return to work schedules and teleworking agreements. And I'm just sharing this on behalf of the board, and perhaps other directors feel this way too. I think this is a real opportunity for the county, to provide a very friendly work environment for families, and especially parents and working parents, especially working moms, that we're working through here to keep them gainfully employed, but also being, as Maria said, flexible. And I can tell you, it has meant a lot to staff, and I know the board is committed to supporting working parents through this and what appears to be an ongoing challenge, perhaps into the next school year. So I don't think we're, obviously out of the woods or anything like that, but at the same time, I think this is an opportunity to make us an even more competitive employer. So, just for what it's worth.
Thank you for those comments. I appreciate that.
Mary Ann, you're up. Pretrial services.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We recently had one of our diversion officers pass a certification test through NAPSA, the National Association of Pretrial Service Agencies. So now 2/3 of our diversion staff are certified for pretrial services work in specializing in diversion. And I think 1/3 of our pretrial officers are certified through NAPSA also. And I think that speaks volumes for my department and their commitment to doing their work and following the best practices and the standards set forth by the field. I just wanted to highlight that and bring that forward as one of the first things that I mentioned. And I'm very proud of my team for that. And what he also brought to me was his results. And he said he was worried because he passed the test fairly quickly and wanted to double check all of his answers, but he did end up scoring 100% on that. So I also wanted to let everyone know that our risk assessment tool will have the validation back hopefully soon. We are meeting to be able to provide information and some guidance regarding the impacts of the Blake decision this Friday. I believe Patrick will be meeting, and then John Thunheim or someone from his office and Judge Price and I will be meeting to be able to give some input to the researchers. That's on Friday. So hopefully we'll have our validation back soon and be moving forward with that. We are also working with Shelley's team over at Public Health and Social Services so that we can provide naloxone. My entire department was trained, so that should we have an incident and we need to be able to address that, my staff have the ability to do so, but also the healthcare authority provided naloxone for my department to be able to distribute that to our clients should they need that. So we are working with Shelley's team to have the training to train the trainer, if you will. And we may be one of the first pretrial departments in the state to be doing that and moving forward with that. So that's an exciting opportunity that we have. Also recently worked with the National Institute of Corrections and NAPSA to participate in the Pretrial Executive Network combined with the Probation Network for diversity, equity, and inclusion training. Sounds like other colleagues on the screen have done that, as well as leadership training, and looking forward to providing some of that information and some of the tools that they provided to me. I wanted to share with the leadership team. And also just last week, worked with Patrick and John Thunheim and their offices to formalize everything that we need to get our pre-charge diversion going, and received our first 11 referrals. So we've been going through those and starting the screening process on that, and excited that we've had the opportunity to expand our diversion program and move forward with assisting in the backlog. And look forward to many more referrals because I think that that's barely a drop in the bucket. There
Questions
are
from
additional
Mary Ann?
things, but that seems to be the list that's at the top.
Questions for Mary Ann? Mary Ann, I got one. So on these 11 referrals, what is it, a certain kind of case, or what's the profile of the 11 cases that you got? Is it C felonies or misdemeanors, or what are they that you're getting?
They're all felonies. The focus right now is on felonies for the pre-charge, just as we start to address these in the system. So they're all felonies. And there are, I'm hesitant to give a whole category of them because some of them are unique. I do have a meeting with my staff to go over some of the unique characteristics of them, but they're all felonies. Right now, the goal is to start addressing the felonies.
But it's not just, sounds like it's not just one kind of case. You're getting a mix of different things.
Yes.
Okay, good. Any other questions for Mary Ann from the board or otherwise?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Next up is Kurt.
Good afternoon. Couple things here. First of all, as was talked about a little bit earlier from Shelley, we have this heat wave coming in. So emergency management is working with the jurisdictions in Thurston County to provide a list of cooling centers, and also with public health, so we can publish that list of cooling centers out to everyone in Thurston County, because not everybody has the advantage of air conditioning, especially during the next 3 days where it's expected to top 100 degrees within the county. The other piece that emergency management is working on is in September, it's National Preparedness Month. And so they're busy putting together some different opportunities for public engagement during National Preparedness Month, to include a program called Map Your Neighborhood, which we used to do in person, but now we're starting to do in a Zoom format for neighborhoods that are out there. So an opportunity to utilize technology during the pandemic. On the Medical One side, EMS, we continue to address the ambulance delay issue. I know that's been ongoing here for a number of weeks now. We've briefed the Board of County Commissioners at one point, and we're still in the same point I think we were previously. We put some mitigation measures in place. They've been successful and to a limited extent, but we're still trying to work around that. And the bottom line is the hospitals are full. And so I think, as public health knows, when the hospitals are full, it causes delays when people are transported to the emergency department and transferring patients off of the ambulances into the emergency department. And then we're continuing to work with law enforcement on the House Bill 1310 impacts that has changed how law enforcement responds to incidents. And in some situations, EMS, where EMS and law enforcement responded to a scenario together, now it's just an EMS response, and we've had to address that and put additional protocols in place for our responders, EMS responders across the county. And then the last one is we're trying to address through a public education process our long-term care facility situation, where we have we start to see an uptick in long-term care facility EMS 911 calls. And what that's happening is that it's generally non-transport related calls to the 911 system by long-term care facilities. And what we're trying to do is educate the staff there on how they can do the assessment of the patient and not necessarily need to call 911, so we can relieve some of the pressure on our 911 system. And then the last thing I would like to bring up is I believe the top 3 contenders for the Pie in the Face contest are on this call. I could be wrong. So if you feel a need to donate to the Little Red Schoolhouse, I would say, feel free to donate to the director of your choice. But Josh and I have served our time as Pie in the Face. So Josh, I think we should endorse one of the candidates to make sure we can help move in that person's direction. What do you think?
I donated to Jennifer Walker.
I think that's a good choice. In fact, I think, Josh, I'm willing to go on record here now as endorsing Jennifer Walker for a Pie in the Face.
I'm going to stay neutral.
Yeah, Josh is going to be more politically correct. I'm out there on a limb.
I think it would be wise to stay neutral, considering Public Works provides a lot of support to a lot of different departments. Just saying, Kurt.
You already don't plow my street because I'm not on one of the priority roads, so I don't know.
Any questions for Kurt?
Kurt, I do.
Yes.
Commissioner?
With the heat wave coming, and I know there's, you made a presentation in regards to, ambulances having kind of like a struggle of lack of space, and there's a delay in response. With the heat wave coming, I'm concerned that that's just going to exacerbate the problem. Is there kind of a plan already set in place?
Well, first of all, we're working with the state, and we made a proposal to the state and so State Department of Health and Governor's Office to, and they're considering establishing transportation strike teams. In other words, EMS transport strike teams that would go out to those areas heavily impacted. And I will tell you that Pierce and Thurston counties are two of the top areas in the state that are impacted for this transport delay. So we are working with the state to try to create the solutions. The other piece I want to emphasize is when somebody is in need of EMS 911 service, there is a response that takes place immediately. In other words, they dispatch resources, but those resources that show up traditionally are not the transport resources. After a patient is assessed, then we make a determination where they need to be transported to the emergency department. So there is someone who will show up, EMS resources on scene when somebody needs assistance. So it's not as if they're out there on their own. And then the other piece is we do prioritize those patients that need transport to the most critical ones that go first. So there is a plan and a process in place to ensure people aren't left out there waiting for someone to show up. There is someone who will show up.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Hey, Kurt, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
The demographics that of the ages, I guess, of the people that you're hauling in, are we getting very many calls now to take folks into the hospital by ambulance that are suffering from severe symptoms from this COVID?
My understanding is it's not COVID related, and I know public health has more information on this than we do, but for our transports piece of it, it's not necessarily it's not COVID. There are probably some COVID patients, and we do track that. I just don't have those stats in front of me. But the issue is, and this started before the uptick in COVID, the hospitals are full. People need medical help, medical care, and the hospitals are where they're getting that. And so that's what's driving most of it. I do know that, and I'll let Shelley talk more to the COVID side of it, but my understanding is this started before the uptick in the COVID cases.
Okay, but from your perspective, there's no spike in COVID cases that you're aware of?
Not for transport, that's from my understanding.
Okay.
But Shelley would have more information as far as hospital admissions for COVID.
Yeah, Shelley, if you want to jump in on that.
Sure. I gave you the statistics yesterday in terms of the number of inpatient at Providence St. Peter Hospital and Capital Medical Center yesterday, and they have seen an increase in those hospitalized and on ventilators right now in Thurston County. Overall in our region, just kind of like Kurt said, when we're talking about the 5-county region, we tend to be above 85% full. And in our hospitals, especially when it comes to emergency department beds, there is an extreme shortage, and that creates challenges as well. New patient admissions due to COVID in Thurston County as of last week was eight new COVID admissions. Once people get admitted and they get in the ICU and on a vent, they tend to stay there for a while. So that can kind of create a backlog when we have new admissions. That's why we track that. I'll have some more data to share with you coming soon in terms of our trends this week.
Just maybe one quick follow-up. Are you keeping track? Are some of those cases, are they the Delta virus cases, or do we know that yet?
So we don't know yet, but based upon the modeling from the state, it is estimated that 95% of the cases right now that we are seeing throughout Washington are the Delta variant. It takes about 3 weeks for us to get that sequencing back on a sample. We have sent an alert out to our hospital and healthcare providers to please retain those samples for us and send those in for sequencing so that we can track that. But we're probably not going to be able to have information on how many of our inpatient hospitalizations and most recent deaths are due to the Delta variant until a little bit down the road. But modeling indicates, yes, Delta is driving this increase right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Let's go to Josh.
So kind of like that split halo effect that Shelley's got there with the lights behind her. I will go on the record as saying that I really appreciate the hard work from public health and all the folks that are out there trying to make a difference in our community. I know it's a hard job, and just wanted to say thank you to Shelley and her whole team for all that good work. So in terms of CPED, we last week had the first formalized meeting with the Thurston Chamber of Commerce on the Business Advisory Group, facilitated by Doug Ma. This is an opportunity to create a two-way line of communication between our permitting group and the building and business community. I think it went off really well. We highlighted the project review timeline that the board has heard about on a number of occasions. If you'll recall, we were going to launch that towards the end of this year. We've decided to move it up and start testing it September 1st. So that's coming up quick. And then throughout the rest of this year, work to ensure that we work out the kinks. And so we're CPED's partnering with Public Health and Public Works to make sure that we've got the communications matrix, which is the document that will have all three departments' requests, and that the external entities are aware, so the applicants are aware that this is a big change in process. So that was a really positive meeting. HCP is moving forward, the Habitat Conservation Plan. If you'll remember, the goal is to get the HCP approved and then receive an ITP, the incidental take permit, towards the first or second quarter of 2022. The big three things there are federal approval of the HCP, board approval of the codes and ordinance that we're drafting currently, and then continuing to acquire land that goes into the mitigation banks that will serve the ITPs. And then next, the board has heard about the success with Single Tree Estates and the cleanup of that property, the difficult property. Like we've said in the past, we've got somewhere between 200 and 500 cases that are compliance cases throughout a year. And very few of those rise all the way to the level of attention of coming to the board for direction on abatement. This one did, and we built a process along the way so it can be replicated in the future. And a big piece of that process was collaboration with internal partners. And so I wanted to give a direct shout out to Public Health, specifically Patrick Soderberg and Mark Koster for their excellent help in the process. And then to Public Works, specifically Rick Thomas, Teresa Parsons, and Susan Isham. They were integral in helping this big community event take place, or big community action take place. And hopefully in the future, we can continue to move this forward. Also, the prosecuting attorney's office, Scott Cushing, was integral as well. And then I'd like to relay that 31-year employee planner, Tammy Traeger, will be retiring at the end of November. So that'll be a big hole in terms of institutional knowledge, but we look forward to continuing to grow the opportunities within CPED for new planning perspectives and making sure that we're serving customers appropriately. And then finally, I'd like to ensure that we're all aware that the youth fair for Thurston County took place and was a success on 2 weekends, the weekend of July 30th and the weekend of August 6th. And so although the fair board recommended, due to COVID, that we honor the restrictions from 4-H, given that kids under 12 can't get the vaccine, the restrictions were to not have a public open fair. The Board of County Commissioners took that recommendation and agreed with them and did not have a public Thurston County Fair, but we did have a youth fair. And so the kids that participated to showing their animals and their dresses and the homemade jams, all of that happened over the past couple of weeks. And so if you hear that we didn't have a fair, that's a misnomer. The reality is we did have a fair and we served our kids in the best way we could during these difficult times. So I appreciate the board's leadership on that. And that's it from CPED.
Questions for Josh?
No, sir.
No.
Good job, Josh.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, that's the roundup. Commissioner Mejia, anything you wanted to report on?
No, sir. No, that's-
Commissioner Edwards,
No, I don't believe so. Thank you.
County Manager?
Yeah, just a couple of updates. Working with Robin and developing a list to present to the board hopefully in the next 2 weeks or so on recommendations to use the ARP funds. I think some of you have been participating on that plan, and then we go through the process. Also this Friday, we're gonna have a day-long planning meeting with the board. We have several agenda items, and some of you will be participating on that as well. And working with Jenica and finalizing at least the draft of the climate mitigation implementation plan. And I think she has been reaching out to some of you to build that plan, and that will be presented to the board on August 24th. I mentioned the Racial Equity Program Manager, Nicole Miller, will be joining us here on August 30th. And that's it, unless you have any questions for me.
Questions for Miro?
Question regarding the support, the staffing support needed for the ERP implementation. I think you had talked about it being maybe having a more holistic approach and identifying all of those resources needed. And so with the kickoff happening in August, certainly we're kind of, already down that road. Is the plan still to look at that to happen during the budget process?
I believe the board approved already the support for the ARP on the positions last year. So that is in the works. If there is additional support, we need to have that conversation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I guess the only thing I would report, a lot of public interest, community interest, and meetings regarding the Capitol Lake draft environmental impact statement. This is a slightly unusual process where typically there would not be public input until a preferred alternative had been developed. But because this is such a long, involved, high community interest, they basically have stopped at the point where they've got their sort of valuation of the alternatives, and they're allowing public input now. And there still will be, they'll take that, and there still will be a development of a preferred alternative and more public input next year. But we're at this kind of like intermediate point where they were going to allow public comment until, I want to say yesterday, and they extended it a couple of weeks, I believe until the 29th. Olympia just weighed in, and I know that there's a draft. There'll be some comments from the county on Josh's team about some of the analysis. It's not a time necessarily to weigh in on any kind of a alternative because they really haven't made a recommendation yet. That'll happen next year, but it's a good opportunity to look at where they're at and what kind of information they're relying on. And if we think there's things missing, we'll pipe up. And I've had a lot of meetings about it. I'll have another one tonight with LOT because LOT is a stakeholder in that process, and we're going to be discussing it from the LOT perspective tonight. The board's had a briefing on it last week and asked questions. And I serve for the county on the executive work group, and I had a presentation to that group. So it's just interesting. The three alternatives being, of course, well, there's a four alternative. One is to just do nothing, which is what we have been doing for 30 years. One alternative is to try to reconstitute a managed lake approach. A second option is a hybrid where they try to keep a saltwater pool, reflecting pool, but keep an estuary functionality on one side. And there'd be a big retaining wall, which is giving some people some grief there. Kind of a big, super high, ugly retaining wall to separate the lake from the estuary piece. And then the last option is just to open it up to a full estuary, just let the natural processes take over. So anyway, a lot of information there, and if anyone wants to see it, you're welcome to come into my office where there's a 2,000-page binder. The county got one copy, and I'm just leaving it open on my table for anyone to come peruse. And if there are any questions about that, happy to answer them. All right, hearing nothing, I think we're adjourned. Anybody else have anything else they want to report? Any fun trips? Any exciting puppies or home acquisitions since the last meeting? All right, thanks guys. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Bye.